Hey guys, Dr. Platt here, and welcome to the first video in our Deconstructing YouTube series. So for those of you who are maybe just joining us and didn't come from the homepage of this project, this is part of a virtual camp activity offered by the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. I'm a professor there in the IT supply chain department. And we usually have some on-campus activities over the summer, but because of the COVID situation, we decided instead to offer a series of free activities that's self-paced that you can do on your own. So hopefully whether you are coming in, well, I should mention it's free and open to anybody. So whether you are coming in from the Whitewater homepage or you stumbled across this on YouTube, you're welcome to stay and check it out. And if you did stumble across it, check down in the bio below because there should be a link back to the homepage that has some activities and things you can do in addition to watching all of the videos that you'll find on my channel. So anyway, so when we say deconstructing YouTube for this camp activity, what do I actually mean by that? We're not deconstructing YouTube in the sense that, after you get done watching the set of 3 videos and, doing a few activities that you're going to be ready to go build your own YouTube, obviously. Figure that's probably know that, but it never hurts. Truth in advertising never hurts to be really upfront and clear about things. When I say deconstructing YouTube, what I really mean is helping you understand how this watching right now, how this actually came to be. What are the different tech roles and skills that go into building something like this? And it's both so you can have an appreciation for it because, we all use YouTube and it's pretty incredible if you think about everything that goes into it. But I think for a lot of people, it's kind of like turning on the faucet. The water comes out and that's just where the water comes from. We don't really spend a lot of time thinking about, well, how do all those pipes get built? Where is this water coming from? How are we making sure it's safe to drink? Same thing with YouTube. YouTube isn't just, it didn't just spring up from nothing. It actually requires a lot of different skills and people involved in building it from its early days and, continual improvement process. Obviously, technology is not the only part of this. You can see that there's ads on here, and there's you have to read legal disclaimers. There's a lot of different types of people that are involved in helping make a company like a YouTube be what it is. But we're going to look at some of the technology roles. So in this video, I'm going to talk to you about computer programming, which you may or may not, I think everybody has some concept of what that is. We're going to talk about it a little bit more okay, when we say computer programming, what do we actually mean? And then we're also going to talk about there's a lot of different things that have to be programmed in YouTube. We're going to talk about a little bit about 2 of the sort of key areas for YouTube. We're going to talk about big data. So you've probably heard that term, but what does it mean? We'll talk about what that is and why managing big data is important for YouTube. And we're also going to talk about search, which is how do you actually find videos that you're interested in watching? So that's kind of our agenda for this. So first of all, what is programming? Whenever I teach, so I teach one of the intro programming classes at UW-Whitewater, and it's one of the first questions I ask my students. I was like, "What's programming, guys?" And everybody has an idea, some sort of an idea of what programming is, and a lot of times people are pretty a fair number of people are a little intimidated by oh gosh, it's programming, it's this hard thing, how to make computers work. I think kind of a sort of a layman's definition is that programming is learning to speak computer. You can learn to speak Spanish, you can learn to speak German, you can learn to speak Japanese, you can learn to speak computer. So programming is basically one of the reasons why I think it has a reputation for being hard is because you're kind of learning how to do 2 things at once the first time you learn how to program. Sort of like learning how to blow a bubble while riding a bike, right? It sounds kind of scary, but blowing a bubble is easy and riding a bike is easy, and once you got those 2 down pat, it's not bad at all to keep going. So why do I say it's like learning to blow bubble while learning to ride a bike? Well, it's because you have to learn to do two things at once. One is you have to learn how to do what's called computational thinking, which means thinking about things the way a program learns how to think about it. So it's not, if you think about like something like making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, that's something that, we all understand how to do. But if you were to explain it to a friend, you'd actually have to like give step-by-step directions. Like, let's say it's a friend who had never made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich before. You'd have to like explain, like, get out the bread, take it apart. Okay, now pick up a knife, stick it in the peanut butter. And it would be the step-by-step process. So learning to think like a computer just means, okay, learning a little bit about what computers can and can't do. And if you need to do something like, well, I want to, after I'm done watching a video on YouTube, I want to display other videos of a similar nature. Well, how do I explain that? What needs to happen to a computer? The other piece is something that's called syntax. And that's basically like, that's kind of like the grammar of programming. Every computer language that you have has its own special words that mean something. And you have, kind of like a punctuation to tell the computer, like, well, this is one instruction. This is, a piece of data. This is, I'm asking you a question. If this happens, I'm going to do this. If that happens, I'm going to do that. So basically, syntax is kind of learning this particular vernacular that the computer is speaking. I mean, obviously, that's kind of again, it's a layman's definition of it, but in a nutshell, that's sort of what syntax is. And if you ever hear about people talking, when I say a programming language, if you hear of like Python or C++ or Java, those are programming languages. So the first time you learn how to program, you have to figure out, okay, how do I explain this to a computer in a way that a computer is going to understand? And the other piece is the first time you learn is kind of learning that syntax, learning how do I actually type this up so that the computer knows what I'm talking about. But the nice thing is that once you learn your first language, the other ones are a lot easier because it's just basically like kind of the difference between how people speak English English in Wisconsin versus how they speak it in, New York or in Florida. It's basically the same thing. There's just some slightly different, like in Wisconsin, we call a water fountain a bubbler. If you're from Wisconsin, you're probably like, yes, obviously. If you're not from Wisconsin, you quite possibly never heard of that before. And so it's not like, that we're speaking a different language. It's just there's some slightly different rules. That's all. So how does this actually apply to building a site? So I mentioned that there's different tasks that you have to be able to do. So like when you want to log into your account on YouTube, well, somebody has to program that. Or if you want to be able to report a video isn't appropriate, someone has to be able to do that. If you like a video, if you want to comment on a video, if you want to create your own channel, if you want to post your own video, all these things are things that somebody had to sit down and program. And, things like login, reporting, or commenting, those are really common across a lot of different types of platforms. As I mentioned at the start of the video, big data and search are things that are actually pretty important to a site like YouTube. So first of all, what's big data? You quite possibly, like if you're interested in tech, you quite possibly have heard this term before. If not, it's like a really important concept for a lot of modern technology, computing, web stuff. And basically, big data is a bit of a squishy term. It just basically means that you have a lot of data and that there's certain qualities about the data that make it more challenging to work with than the traditional data that you've worked with. And when I say data, like it can mean all sorts of different things. So in the context of YouTube, data is your list of users. Data is all of your videos. Data are your comments, your likes, what's been reported, login credentials, statistics. If you have your own channel, when you go and you look at those analytics tabs and you see kind of information about, who's watching what videos, that's data. So anything that might be of use to a user or to someone at YouTube that they're tracking, that's data. So it can mean a whole wide range of different things. And, in terms of big data, depending on what sort of problem you're trying to solve, there's some variability in terms of how people define it. But generally, you're looking for what's referred to as the 3 V's of big data. The first one is volume, which just means that there's a lot. What does a lot mean? Well, like I said, it depends based on the type of problem you're trying to solve, how hard it is for the computer to solve it. Yes, some problems are harder for computers to solve than others. It's a different video though. And then, also, as you know, computers get more powerful over time. Like if you look at your smartphone, it's more powerful than the computer they used to send somebody to the moon, which is like crazy, but it's true. So, what would have been, I mean, not that there was really big data back then or a concept of that, but if there was, what they would have considered to be big data is completely different from what we would consider it to be today. And, when 10 years from now, it's going to be different too, because computers are constantly getting more powerful. There's also velocity, which has to do with how fast the data is coming in. So if you think about like a place like YouTube, where you constantly have people interacting with it versus say your school's website, you have people going to your school's website and logging in and checking assignments and, posting announcements and maybe registering for something. So there's definitely data constantly being created there. But that's like nothing like the pace of data that's being created on a site like YouTube. So velocity has to do with how fast the data is streaming in, and that adds its own complications. And lastly, there's variety. So let's say you have a website where like the only data you're collecting is somebody filling out a form. You might get a lot of people filling out that form, but you do have the benefit of it just being, the data that you're collecting being very uniform, which allows people who are programming to kind of make certain assumptions about like things that need to happen. But with a lot of big data sites, YouTube being no exception, there's a lot of different types of data that are being created, which means that there's a lot of variety, which also makes, you have this big amount of data, it's coming at you really fast. And oh, by the way, there's all sorts of weird things going on in there. So basically, if you have somebody explaining a situation to you where you're processing data and it's like, gosh, it sounds a little bit like the Wild West, it's probably big data. So that's it in a nutshell. If you're interested in learning more, you should definitely, depending on the situation, like some people also count like there's other V's that are added. Those 3 are sort of like the classic ones. But there's a wealth of information online. If people are interested, I might make some other videos later with some more information about big data, what it is, and what some of these other 3 V's are. But for today, we're going to stick with that. The other thing that I mentioned that's really important is search. This is sometimes, if you are interested in, thinking ahead to classes you might want to take when you're in college, or just things you might want to read about on your own. If you search for information retrieval or text mining, those are the terms that, or classes that'll cover things related to this. What search is, it's basically like a search engine, like Googling something. And it's a way of expressing your information need, which in the case of YouTube is like, I'm bored, I want to watch something. So you can search for something, and then, YouTube or whatever site it is, they somehow figure out, based on the couple of words that you wrote and compare it to all that big data of videos that they have, and try to figure out, what would be most interesting to you. So obviously, based on like the topic of the video, what people are writing about it, you might be able to, if can look and see, like you probably would want to, if I were YouTube and writing this, if you have somebody who has like a ton of followers and their videos are super popular, you'd probably want to serve up that video closer to the top, as opposed to somebody who has been on for 5 years and they've gotten 13 views ever. So you're basically looking at what seems to be relevant and also what seems to be high quality. So how much does it match those terms that you're writing about? And also how much does it, what are some indicators that I think that this video might be something that somebody would actually want to watch? And I'm obviously simplifying it a lot because this is just an intro video, but those are like 2 of the key things that you would think about if you were a programmer trying to figure out, well, when somebody types in funny cat video, like what funny cat video should, like what video should I actually send them links and thumbnails? But we know that search is not the only way that we find videos on YouTube. Usually, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like when I log in, I just kind of show up and, sometimes I search for things, but other times there are things that kind of pop up and I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. Also, I, can see when channels that I subscribe to have new videos. So how does that actually happen? Well, let's talk about subscribing first. So whenever you find a video or a channel that you like, you can subscribe. So for example, if you would like to find out more about when we have more of these camp activities or other videos, feel free to subscribe below, so you'll get those notifications. But so anyway, so how does, from a programmer standpoint, how does that actually happen? I'm going to subscribe to this channel. When am I going to know when there's a new camp activity? Well, basically, you maybe have heard the term like database, which is one of the ways that, program or software companies store their data, or really any company for that matter. Basically, it's a software way of storing data. You can store, like, for example, lists of, for each person, kind of like a mapping, like this person subscribes to this channel or this channel has this list of subscribers. So one thing that needs to happen is when you do subscribe or when you like a video, like these are things that are going to have to, be kept track of. But then when, let's say you do subscribe to this channel and then I post a new video, the programmer is going to have figure out a way that, okay, when that happens, I'm going to have to like listen for like an event and figure out that I'm going to have to trigger something to happen. So that way, when you log into your account, you get, you can see that some of the channels that you've subscribed to have new videos. So that is, it's not so much, I mean, it's pretty straightforward in terms of what needs to happen, in the sense that you're not like, unlike search where you're trying to figure out like, well, when you say funny cat videos, like what do you actually mean? Like what sorts of funny cat videos do you actually want? With subscription, it's a little bit more straightforward because you want to see the videos that, the channels that you subscribe to. But there are still some things to figure out, like how far back should we go? How long should we have any, like it showing up or any notifications? But the point is that a programmer is going to have to, kind of going back to what we talked about, figure out like, well, what are the steps that we're going to have to take? And then how do I express that in whatever language I'm programming in? Lastly, and this is, I think, a pretty interesting one, is something that's called like recommendations. So when you get videos that, like, let's say you watched a video recently, like let's say you finished watching a funny cat video, right? You'll probably see other videos that crop up that are related to your search. Or if you're watching, a music video, you're probably going to find like related music videos or other videos from that other artist. And the interesting thing is that, like, let's say you and your friend both log into your accounts and you search for the exact same thing or watch the exact same video. The content that gets served up to you afterwards is almost certainly going to be at least a little bit different. In some cases, it may be wildly different. Why is that? If you just watch the same video, like, shouldn't it be recommending the same things? Well, talking about like that big data and all the things that YouTube and sites like that keep track of, well, they keep track of your historical patterns. So what else have you searched for? What other videos have you engaged with? What channels have you subscribed to? What videos have you liked? What ads have you clicked on? What videos have you commented on? And they can do things like, they can look and see, for example, people who like, a particular music video. Maybe if that artist just released a new video, well, maybe we're going to put that higher up. Or maybe we've noticed that people who like this particular music video also like music from this other artist. So maybe we'll figure out how to serve that up. So you can look and see patterns. You can look at sort of like hidden patterns in how, like, relationships between videos, but you also can look for similar users. So if you like, think about, compare your viewing habits to your parents, I'm assuming your parents are on YouTube, right? Compare your viewing habits to your parents or to your siblings or to your friends. And you're going to have different interests. You're going to have different things that are going to resonate with you or you're going to want to learn more about. So what they'll do is they'll find groupings of similar users. Like your viewing habits are probably closer to your best friends than they are to like your mom or your dad's. So that's going to let them figure out how to basically make better recommendations. So they can look and see, well, other people who have similar viewing habits, do you like this? So there's a whole bunch of different factors, but really what they're looking for is, what you've interacted with, what you've subscribed to, what you like, and then paying attention to patterns between videos that seem to be, popular with this, like same people and people who have similar interests to you. So that's how those videos actually get populated. And a programmer, again, has to figure out like, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to recommend them? Then translate that into computer language, right? Express it. You use computational thinking like a computer to express those steps, just the same way that you can express the steps of making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And then write them in the syntax of the language that they're programming in. So that's basically, what I wanted to touch on today. There's obviously a lot of other things in programming like security, maintaining user profiles, serving up ads, figuring out how to take care of payments from those advertisements. And I mean, there's a lot going on in there. I could probably shoot like 10 hours worth of videos and still have things to talk about. But hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into how, what programming actually is, and two of the key areas that need to be addressed with programming if you're going to build a site like YouTube. So I hope you continue on with this. If you, like I said, if you're not coming from the Whitewater homepage, if down below there should be a link back to the camp activity, which is free and open to anybody. So it has some different, in addition to the videos, some things that you can do to learn more. And also in this series, we're going to be talking to some technology professionals who do things other than programming. And you can learn a little bit about that and how that all fits into building a site like YouTube. So anyway, thanks guys, take care, and I will talk to you next time.